Auditing and Assurance Standard Board of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I welcome you all in today's 94th CPE program organized by AASB of ICI this council year. And the topic of the today's webinar is very important. That is the key consideration in audit of non-profit organization. In order to tackle this very important topic, we are having with us our very learned speaker, CA Parveen Kumar ji. I welcome on behalf of AASB of ICI, sir. Welcome, Parveen, sir. We are having with us Honorable Vice Chairman of Auditing and Assurance Standard Board and Honorable Vice Chairman of Board of Studies, CA Vishal Doshi ji. I welcome you, sir. In order to start the formal proceedings of the webinar, I request Honorable Vice Chairman of Auditing and Assurance Standard Board, C. Vishal Doshi ji, to please start the. May I request for your opening remarks and keynote address, sir. Over to Vice Chairman, sir, please.
Sure. Thank you very much, Anil. Very good afternoon to our learned speaker, Parveen Kumar ji, and to all the participants who are attending this webinar. I would say the 94th webinar that we are conducting in a span of 7 months. And I'm very happy to share that we have been getting very, very good response from the participants. And that is what is encouraging us to keep on doing more programs. And in fact, I would share that in spite of this being a non-CP, structured CP is not there eligible for this event, then also we are having more than 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 participants in each of the webinars. That shows that the participants are eager to learn. They are eager to know. It's not for CP only that they are attending these events, but they are actually attending these webinars because they are learning, they are gaining in the whole process, and they are ensuring that they take back home something which would help them in their day-to-day audit practice. So once again, I thank everybody who is, I would say, instrumental in making this happen. So here's the topic is key considerations in a NPO, the non-profit organization. And just before we went live, I was discussing with Parveen sir that this is a topic where, as professionals, we do not get too much of material on the audits, on the financial statements of the NPOs, which are there in public domain, which are available in public domain for the practicing members to refer to research to, because when we talk of the other commercial and business enterprises, we have a lot of financials available on the for the listed companies, definitely on the stock exchanges, and even we have various softwares where the financial statements of business and enterprises are available. But for NPOs, there are always these challenges, and a large number of NPOs, I would say, are being audited by our small and medium practitioner friends. And therefore, this would be an extremely important topic to deliberate on. And I am extremely happy to share that we could not have found a better speaker than Parveen sir to take us through the nuances of this topic. He's a senior partner and a national head of the assurance division of ASA, which has more than 8 offices and 700 plus team. He has an experience of over 31 years and has also holds a diploma in the ISO Information Systems Audit and also certification in IFRS from the UK. Parveen sir is a member of the AASB. Earlier, he was a member of NACAS, the Accounting Standard Board, and the ESC, besides various research groups and committees of the ICI. He has the experience of working on large number of risk advisory assignments, audits, forensic, fraud investigation, and IFRS transition for various corporates. He is a regular speaker in national and international forum, and he has also published a book and written many papers and articles for renowned journals and magazines. He has been invited to present papers by reputed institutions, not only in India, but outside India, beside various large companies and branches of ICI across the country. With this, I welcome Parveen sir and also thank him for accepting our invitation and sharing his knowledge with the participants and the members. Thank you, sir. And now over to you.
Thank you so much, Vishal bhai, for your kind words, and thank you for inviting me. And it is an honor to be part of your team. We discuss various issues in AASB, and this auditing profession is actually undergoing a transition period. We are all unlearning old things and learning new things. And we are focusing on, how a solid documentation is required when we are carrying out the audit. So today's topic is very important and very contemporary, because in January 22, the institute has brought out a publication on, accounting framework for NPOs. And that is something which is now streamlining the way financial statements are prepared by all the non-profit organizations. And as auditors of those non-profit organizations, it becomes our responsibility to understand what activities are being carried out, and also to really, take care of a true and fair presentation of financial statements. And we need to give our opinion. Also, there are some very large organizations which are functioning as NPOs. So this technical guide will really streamline the way financial statements are prepared. So very relevant topic. And I'm really thankful to Anil ji and the staff for, putting their brain and bringing out the ideas of bringing such kind of topics for discussion. Very, very relevant and very important. So I will be sharing a small presentation with all of you. So I am just putting my slides up. Anilji, can you confirm? Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine. So basically, the presentation will run for 1.5 hours or so, because when I was discussing with the Vishal Bhai and Anil ji, I could see that there is a need for understanding about this technical guide, the framework. So I'll be having some slides, around 10 slides on that aspect. And then I move to the auditing work paper, what kind of work papers we should have when we are doing audits. So many times we see that, when you're auditing a trust or a smaller organizations or NPO or Section 8 companies, the auditors just, complete the basic formality, have their own understanding that whether the financial statements are right, giving a true picture, and give their report. But of late, it has been observed that those files need to be strengthened. The auditing profession need to take these audits also very, very seriously, because some of the instances which have come to the light, where these non-profit organizations were carrying out activities, and when the regulators look at those activities, they were really serious in nature. And the questions were asked from the auditing firms and the auditing teams, that have you not even seen those small little things? And where is your working paper file? So it is very important for us to understand how we will do the audit of these NPOs, and what kind of audit work papers we need to have in our files. So broadly, these three areas I will be discussing in today's presentation. And as it was discussed in the beginning, I hope there will be a lot of questions, and we will be glad to take those questions. I will be asking the institute staff and Anil ji to take note of those questions. And once we have completed going through the slides, after that we will take up these questions one by one. Primarily, the issue we will be dealing with, that when you are doing audit of such NPO, what kind of precaution you should be taking, what kind of activities you should be doing, and what kind of documentation and work papers you should be preparing. So not largely different from when you do other commercial audit, because in audit you are giving an opinion on the financial statements. So how have you reached to that opinion? Your work paper file should be able to demonstrate that this is how you have concluded. So let's go to the topic straight away. So let us understand the non-profit organizations, which is nomenclatured as NPO during today's discussion. this term is very broad, and a different kind of organizations are covered. So as the name itself suggests, that organizations which are not earning profits or which are not having a profit motive, those will be covered. So they can be international charitable organizations, or it can be a small community-based self-help groups. They can be religious, they can be social, they can be research institutes, they can be professional associates. The some of the features maybe can characterize the NPO. So those features may be that these may be formal organization, and this may be association of person, maybe informal also. These may be private, or these may be public charitable organizations also. They will be largely self-governing. Some of the organizations, they function as research centers. Some of them may be voluntary in nature. Some of them might be non-religious, and some of them might be non-political also. But the combination of one or two or many of them can be the characteristics of those NPOs. Now, let us look at the financial reporting framework. In India, we had some serious issues and some significant issues around NPOs. And especially when I am talking about NPOs, I'm talking about their financial reporting framework. So, number one, there are large number of unregistered NPOs in India. Number two, there are very limited awareness of applicability of accounting standards on those NPOs. People feel that this is a very small trust or a society or a very small organization or association of person. So we probably don't need to apply these accounting standards. And some of them, they feel that it is important. So there is an inconsistency in the basis of accounting. Some people, they maintain on cash system of accounting. Some people maintain on accrual system of accounting. And some people maintain on hybrid system of accounting, something in cash system, something on accrual system. And this lack of uniformity also results in presentation of the financial statements, even the disclosures. So this uniformity is missing. So one trust might be giving their financial statement in one format, the other organization might be giving it in a different format. Mainly, why they prepare the financial statement is to meet the requirement of tax regulations, or the requirements of the donors, or there may be another regulation or law which is compelling them to prepare their financial statements. But the terminology which are being used in those NPOs, they are missing uniformity, and even the accounting policies might be different. So these are the challenges which are there in reporting framework, financial reporting framework of NPOs. And then the outcome is that they are neither standard nor comparable. So one NPO's financial statements cannot be compared with the other financial statement of another NPO. And this creates a challenge in the life of the auditors, because clarity and understanding among the users of financial statements which are provided by NPOs, lack of uniformity and lack of accounting standard applicability, they create issues. And then the problem or the challenges come in the life of the auditors and how to do the audit of these organizations. So as I had mentioned in the beginning, there was a technical guide which was published by the Institute on application of accounting standards during preparation of financial statements of NPOs. This is a technical guide. So please remember, this is not an accounting standard. This is not a guidance note. This is a technical guide. And this technical guide focuses on presenting a standard framework of preparation and presentation of financial statements for non-profit organizations. A very, very significant step taken by the Institute it is supposed to bring in a lot of uniformity and a lot of clarity in the way these financial statements are prepared and presented. And hence it is going to help the auditors in understanding and comparing various financial statements and doing their audits in a uniform manner. Now this technical guide, I'll be sharing some thoughts on this guide before moving on to how to which areas or which considerations you should be having while doing the audit. So as per the technical guide, the presentation of financial statement should be annual at least, and are directed towards the common information, which is the requirement of the concerned stakeholders and society at large. So as we understand, the main purpose of these financial statements are to know the financial position, to understand what activities have been carried out and what are the outcome of those activities, and to know the cash and bank position. So you prepare balance sheet to know the financial statement of, to understand the financial status, what are the assets, what are the liabilities, to know how much income was there and how much expenses were there. There's a statement of profit and loss or income and expenditure account, which is prepared by the NPOs. And then the cash flow statements, if it is required by the accounting standards. However, this technical guide has scoped out the computations which are prepared for tax purpose, or in case there are any statements which are prepared as a special need by regulatory bodies or the agencies which are giving donations, or having authority to obtain the type of information they need. If donors have requested for such kind of information, that will be given by these NPOs in the format which has been asked for. Also, the taxation purpose computations when they are prepared. So these things have been kept out of the scope of this technical guide. Now, what is there in the technical guide and what is there in the accounting framework for these NPOs? So primarily, the elements of financial statements, they are comprising income, expenses, assets, and liabilities. So this is explained in the framework of accounting in NPOs. It is similar to the framework of accounting for any other organization as well. But the detailing has been done keeping in mind the requirements of NPOs. Then principles of recognition of income, expenses, and liabilities, principles of measurement of income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and then presentation and disclosure principles. All these principles have been given in the framework. So it is going to streamline the way NPOs are preparing their financial statements, or the way they are presenting their financial results. And here are some key points of this technical guide, which will be very relevant and very important for you to understand. Accrual system of accounting has been recommended by the technical guide as the basis of accounting. So although I understand that when you are preparing accounts on cash system of accounting, or when you are auditing the financial statements which have been prepared on cash system of accounting, it's relatively simple and straightforward. But accrual system has been recommended because all other financial statement frameworks, they provide for accrual system of accounting as the basis of accounting. So for NPOs also, the technical guide has recommended that the NPO should follow accrual system of accounting. And then the recognition, measurement, presentation, and disclosure requirement, they need to be followed as mentioned in the accounting standards to the extent applicable. And this technical guide also in clause 42 mentions that there are some accounting standards which might not be relevant for NPOs. For example, consolidation of financial statements, AS21, or amalgamation related standards, or interim financial reporting related standards. So those kind of standards might not be applicable on NPOs, but wherever required, these accounting standards have to be applied in preparing the financial statements of NPO. So the format, this question comes up again and again, whether the NPO should prepare T-shaped balance sheet or financial statement, can they give in that format? So the technical guide recommends that NPOs which are registered, incorporated under the Companies Act, in any case, they will be following what has been mentioned in Schedule 3, the Division 2 of the Companies Act 2013. They need to follow the same format for financial statements. The technical guide suggests that, and it recommends that other NPOs should also follow the same pattern or the same format for presentation of financial statements. So you can broadly divide these NPOs into two categories. One category can be the companies, which are Section 8 companies, and the other category can be non-corporate. So for the companies, you will in any case follow what has been mentioned in the Companies Act. For others also, the technical guide states that you can follow the same pattern or same format which has been given for the companies. Now, what are the financial statements? So the balance sheet, statement of profit and loss, which might be nomenclatured as income and expenditure account, and then notes and other explanatory information. And wherever applicable, you will be preparing, the NPOs will be preparing the cash flow statement as well. Also, the technical guide recommends that the comparative information, which includes narrative and descriptive information, at least for 1 year, past year, should also be given alongside in the financial statements. This is similar to what is given in the requirement of the Companies Act. Now, the technical guide has also given you the principles of recognition and measurement. So there are general recognition criteria, which is similar to the framework of other organizations' accounting framework. Reliable and reasonable measure is available, then you will be able to recognize that. And you should be, it should be probable that such benefits will be obtained or given up. So that is the general recognition criteria. However, the professional judgment is required to consider the special circumstances. So where any particular item has to be recognized or it is not supposed to be recognized. So you need to apply the professional judgment if you are preparing those those financial statements. There are certain specific items which appear in the financial statements of NPO. There are restricted contributions as well as unrestricted contributions. We will discuss it in the coming slides. So whether received or receivable, and based on the related restriction, you will be using the terminology which has been given in this technical guide. And gains have to be recognized when they are realized, and expenses have to be recognized according to the matching concepts. And losses, as conservative accounting system, when expenditure or previous asset do not have future economic benefits, that time the losses have to be accounted for. So these are the recognition and measurement principles which have been given. And the format, like I had mentioned earlier, the basics are statement of income and expenditure and balance sheet along with the notes to accounts. And your accounting policies will also be mentioned in those alongside. Then NPOs should also prepare a cash flow statement in accordance with the accounting standards. And then they should reflect restricted and unrestricted funds separately. And that will depend on the nature, and we will need to go to the substance of whether this fund is restricted or this is unrestricted. We'll have some discussion around that as well, and should not present the balance sheet in multi-columnar form. So the NPOs which have been formed as a company under Section 8 of the Companies Act 2013, they are required to follow mandatorily the accounting standards which are issued by Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and the formats of the financials are given in Schedule 3 of the Companies Act. Then the companies, then the NPOs which are not registered as companies, so they might have been registered under different statute. And if that statute has prescribed a format, then their financial statements will be prepared as per that format, or otherwise it is recommended that format given under the Companies Act may be followed, should be followed by these NPOs. Now look at unrestricted and restricted funds. So first, let me define, let me explain what has been defined as restricted funds in the technical guide. So basically, the funds which have been given or contributed to the NPO with no specific restriction. These are for general purpose use, and they can be of different kind. One is the corpus, where the fund is contributed by the promoters or the people who are founding these NPOs to start the NPO. And then there can be designated fund, which can be for specific purpose or to meet the future commitments. And then there can be general fund, which are other than designated funds and the corpus. Then there are restricted funds, which are subject to certain conditions. So when a donor is giving a contribution to the NPO and setting out certain obligations and certain conditions for how to use this fund, and the NPO has agreed to these conditions, then those funds will be separately kept and will be used according to the conditions, and will be disclosed separately in the financial statements. Now, this was a broad understanding of the technical guide, which has been issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in January 22. And when the NPOs are preparing their financial statements, the auditors come into picture and they need to give an opinion. So when you are doing the audit, please remember that preparation of financial statements is the responsibility of the management of NPO. This is very critical aspect. Even though the size may be small, even though the activities may be very limited, but still, being the auditors, you need to maintain your independence. And also you need to take care of the audit quality. Recently, IAASP has brought out a framework on audit quality, which has described that when you are doing audits, there are inputs, there is a process, and there is an output, and there are factors. So these factors which will contribute to your audit quality. And these financial statements audit, when you are carrying out these audits, you need to be mindful of these guidances and this framework where the audit quality is supposed to be monitored. So there are certain areas or certain pointers which can directly affect your audit qualities. And most important part is the auditor's professional knowledge and the skill sets. Then professional skepticism. So if you are doing audit of an NPO and you realize that there are a lot of transactions in cash, so you should be very naturally raising a question that, why there is a need of doing cash transactions. Then standard compliances, it may be related to the regulations, it may be related to the conditions of the donors, but then standard compliances are supposed to be met, even if it is a very small unregistered NPO. But still, if they are, having activities, financial statements have to be prepared. And if you are availing tax exemptions, needless to say that you will need to submit those returns and those kind of statements which are required as per the tax regulations. Then your audit quality can be really affected if your working conditions are not conducive. So you need to be mindful of that aspect as well. Your audit duration and how you are controlling the quality of audit. So there can be various factors which can be, instrumental in your audit quality. And we will be discussing what kind of work paper you should be having, what kind of activities you should be carrying out, what kind of controls you should be having, what are the general controls which you should have in your office in order to carry out the audits, and what are the specific controls which you should be applying while doing the specific audit. So we will be discussing both kind of controls, the general controls as well as specific controls, and there will be a discussion around both kind of controls especially when you are doing the audits. So the regulators might not be looking at your files on a regular basis. But believe me, if something goes wrong and if the NPOs you have done the audit is found involved in some activity which is against the law, then there will be a question, and at that time you will not be able to reproduce the papers or remake the audit file. So it is very important that whichever work you are doing, wherever you are doing the audit, you need to prepare the audit file there and then. And I'll be sharing with you what sections you should be having in your work paper file. It can be related to appointment, it can be related to the actual field work, it can be related to the completion. So I'll be sharing all of that with you, which will help you in preparation of your audit work paper file. So please understand what is the purpose of the audit. So when you are doing audit of an NPO, why you are doing an audit? So that is it is very critical to understand. So on a very broad level, on a very theoretical level, or on a very, very base level, the purpose of audit is to validate the confidence of the users of financial statements. That's the main purpose for which financial statements are prepared. Financial statements are prepared in order to help users at taking a decision. And users can be various kinds. They can be internal, the governing body and the people who are managing those NPOs and the auditors or the employees, or the users can be external. It can be regulators, it can be tax regulators, it can be other donors who are trying to contribute. They would like to see what is happening in the NPO. And there can be donors, there can be other organizations which may want to have a look at the financial statement. So objective of preparation of financial statement is to help all these users taking a decision. And the role of auditor is to validate the confidence of the users. So that means your user will be able to have further confidence if an auditor has given their opinion. So basically the audit, it shows where you stand and help inform you the next step. So whether you are an internal user of those financial statements or external users. So this audit report will really help you to bring about that kind of confidence in the minds of users, that somebody who is expert in looking at the financial statement has looked into those statements and has given an opinion that in the view of that auditor, whether the financial statements are providing true and fair picture or not. So audit core and enduring mandate is to attest the financial statement and give the opinion whether these financial statements are giving true and fair view in all material aspects and in accordance with the relevant financial reporting framework. So till now, till the previous year, the issue was that which financial reporting framework is applicable on the trust, on the educational institutions, on the religious organizations, on the non-political organizations, association of persons. There was a lot of confusion around. But now the confusion has settled. Now the technical guide is there. So that can provide you the basis. So when you are doing an audit, you can always tell the NPO that there is a technical guide which provides the financial statement, financial reporting framework for NPOs. And why don't you follow all those guidance which have been given in that technical guide? And that technical guide clearly says that you need to follow the accounting standards while preparing these financial statements. Now you have gone and you have taken accepted audit of an NPO. You're starting your audit and you realize that the work papers you will be requiring for doing audit of those small NPOs or large NPOs are almost similar to when you are doing audit of a different organization. There are some common observations. When you looked at the large audits, most of the audit files, they included evidences sought, but that's it. There was nothing mentioned on those, evidences which were taken during the audit. For example, you've taken the ledger accounts and kept it in the file. You've taken the copy of invoices and kept it in the files. You have taken copy of the TDS returns, GST returns, and other returns and kept it in the file. What activity had been carried out? That was not mentioned on those papers. So audit procedures, how did you plan the audit? How did you perform the audit? And how did you conclude the audit? Those were not mentioned in those files. Please remember, taking a copy of invoice and keeping it in your audit file doesn't serve any purpose. Till the time you've written that, okay, with this paper, what have you done? And I'll be discussing with you what exactly can be written on that paper, on that, invoice, copy of the invoice which you have taken. So you need to mention and you need to record what audit procedures were performed, what activities were carried out, what kind of evidences you had obtained, and how did you arrive at the conclusion. So for example, you are doing audit of an NPO, which is an educational institution, and they are receiving various kind of incomes, like in terms of fees from the children. There can be donations, there can be contributions, there can be interest on the bank deposits. So what kind of audit procedures you have performed on, on those items, on those components of the financial statements? You need to really demonstrate in your audit file what procedures were performed, what evidences were obtained, and how you have reached to the conclusion. You may feel that, it's such a lengthy work paper we are getting advised. But when we are doing audit of a small trust, there are hardly any transactions and there are hardly any activities. So why there's a need of having all those kind of stuff? But trust me, when you are, even if the trust, the NPO is very small entity, but if you have done the audit and you have, let's say you have taken the bank statement, which comes on one page only, but on the page you have written that, okay, you have reconciled or you have seen the closing balance and matched it with the financial statement balance sheet. So this is fine, and your initial. So that is that you have obtained evidence to know whether the component which is a bank balance shown in the balance sheet. So you have taken an evidence which is a bank statement and then you have marked on it. But then the auditing standard also wants you to have an independent confirmation from the bank. So you need to float and send a confirmation letter to the bank that, okay, the balance sheet is showing this amount, the statement of account bank statement is showing this amount. So you need to send an independent confirmation to the bank. And please note that that is a compulsory audit procedure, which you will need to do as per the auditing standards. So if you miss out on that and tomorrow something goes wrong and you realize that the bank statements which were provided to you were not appropriate, they were fudged, then you are in a, you will be asked a question, why did you not follow the auditing standards? So till the time things goes fine, things are going fine, nobody is asking a question, you are happy. But at the same time, you need to be prepared that in case somebody asks a question, your audit work paper file should have evidence to demonstrate that you carried out your audit work and you were not professionally professionally negligent in carrying out that assignment. So your audit documentation should provide an evidence which is basis for your report and how have you concluded. So audit was conducted as per auditing standards and as per regulatory requirement is something which should be there in your audit file. So if you're doing audit of a small entity, the file can be one file and it can have various sections. But if you are auditing NPO, which is of a large, which is having large transactions, then you may need to have, many files. But your audit documentation, as mentioned in Standard on Auditing 230, it is your responsibility as auditor to prepare the audit documentation. And of late, needless to say, that audit documentation has gained much more importance than it was having in the past, especially after the regulators are tightening the screws and auditors are under lens. So there is a need to maintain the audit documentation. The need is much more in present scenario. So when you collect a paper from the client, and in your case, the client is an NPO. So let us say you have taken one paper from them. And we take the same example, in the balance sheet, there is an amount which is written as bank balance. And on your work paper, what have you obtained and what have you taken? You will need to mention the purpose. Why have you taken the bank statement? Why have you taken the bank reconciliation statement? And why have you circulated the bank confirmation letter? What is the purpose of this audit procedure? To know whether the balance which has been shown in the balance sheet is true and fair or not. And then source, how have you obtained the bank confirmation letter, bank confirmation, balance confirmation? How have you obtained the bank statement? What is the source of your evidence? Whether this information was provided by the entity or the NPO themselves, or have you taken it directly from the third party? And in this particular example, the bank itself will be a third party. Then what have you concluded? You have to write down that your conclusion, which is based on that document, and what have you done on that document? What procedures have you performed? What have you concluded? So you might conclude that, okay, I have seen the bank statement and the balance which is showing in the balance sheet is different. So I have seen the bank reconciliation statement. I have also floated balance confirmation letter and I got a direct confirmation from the bank. So I conclude that the balance sheet is showing this amount as bank balance is a true picture. So extent to which you have picked up the samples. So in case of NPOs also, and please remember, when we are talking non-profit organization, we are talking about large organizations also, which might have been formed in order to carry out activity which is non-for-profit activities. And those are very, very large organizations, and they can be international also. And they can be having Indian chapter for which you might have been given the responsibility, or you might have taken up the audit of that international organization itself, auditing of that. So what kind of sampling you have done, you are picking up? Why have you picked up those samples? And what is the basis for your sample selection? That is something which is being asked by every regulator. So even in your commercial organizations or other audits, I think this question has been asked by various regulators, that why have you picked up these samples? What are the basis, and what is your methodology of picking up the samples? So whether it was random sampling, you use the Microsoft tables, or you use some kind of audit softwares, or what exactly was used, and what kind of checking you have done. Your sampling, it was how much percentage of the total size. So you need to be very mindful that your audit documentation, audit work paper should demonstrate that how have you picked up those samples, and then what have you done on those samples, what audit procedures were performed on those samples. So you have taken few vouchers in order to understand whether the expenses are recorded properly or not. What have you done? Have you looked at the controls of the entity and you relied on the controls, or you have done your own substantive testing on the samples which you have picked up? Whether you focused on substantive testing itself to gain confidence and to reach to your conclusion, or you relied on the controls which are there existing in the organization itself. And NPOs might have internal control system which might be sufficient according to the size of that organization. Then which period you have verified their evidences for. So whether they are during your audit period, after your audit period, before your audit period. So what is the timing, and how have you verified those evidences? Now, when we compartmentalize our audit file, there can be broadly 5 compartments. One compartment which is very critical is actually all the 5 are very, very critical components of your audit file. Appointment formalities, you need to have a very clear-cut work papers, your communication to the previous auditor, and your request for no objection, your appointment and the formalities related to appointment should be documented, and it should be there in your file. Second component can be audit planning. How have you planned the audit, looking into the size and complexity of that NPO? How have you done the planning? And then how did you execute the assignment? What kind of people you have deputed? What kind of issues you observed? And what have you done with those issues? Whether you had taken a external consultation, whether you did your own internal brainstorming, and what other procedures you have carried, you have performed in order to reach to your opinion. And how have you completed your assignment, and how you have done the reporting. All these 5 compartments should be there. So like I had mentioned earlier, if your NPO is a small one for which you are doing the audit, these all 5 compartments can be plugged within one file itself. But if you are doing audit of a large NPO or maybe international NPO, then the issues might be different and of magnitude, bigger magnitude. So then you may need to have separate files for those kind of activities. So in appointment formalities, whether the NPO is small or large, but you need to carry out your background check. You need to have that KYC document in place. Your engagement acceptance decision checklist should be there in your audit work paper file. What kind of risk have you identified for that NPO? Whether there was a fraud risk, whether there was a revenue recognition related risk, whether there were other risks which you have identified. And then whether the independence confirmation from partners in the team was obtained or not. So when when we look at the files, many times the audit firm or the partner says that we are only two partners and there are only 4 people working with us. So we just checked with them verbally, and they said no, we do not have any independence related conflict, and we picked up the audit. But my friends, for audit work paper, you need to have a signed independent confirmation, and that has to be kept in the file itself, so that tomorrow, if any regulator or anybody asks a question, you should have that independence confirmation. So this is basically a requirement of standard on quality control in your organization, and very important part of acceptance. Then if your NPO is a company, then of course you will be following what has been required under the Companies Act. For example, the shareholders approval and intimation. Intimation to the previous auditor will be required in all the cases. So communication with previous auditors will be there. And then your ADT1 and audit acceptance and signed engagement letter will also be required in all the NPOs. So the basics. So these documents which I am discussing with you are the very, very basic requirements of any acceptance. So there can be 5 papers or 6 papers in every audit work paper file. They should be there at least. So background check, KYC should be there. Acceptance decision checklist, how you decided that you are going to take it. What are the perceived risks? And your audit planning, it has to be connected with the risk which you have identified. And then your audit procedures, they should all come in one flow, identifying the risk, your audit strategy and the planning. It should be connected with those risks, and how have you performed the audit. Signed independence confirmation should be there by all the partners, and if it is a company, then board approval. Previous communication with the previous auditor should be there in your file, and audit acceptance should be there. ADT1 if this is the company, and then your signed engagement letter, which is very, very critical part. So timing and dating of above key documents. So very, very critical to write down the date on these papers, and also if possible, please write the time. So it is not advisable to first accept the assignment, start doing audit procedures, and later on, once the audit is completed, you say, oh my God, I forgot to take the engagement letter, let me take it now. So you need to be mindful, you need to be careful that you are accepting the appointment, and this this paper is required before you start the work. Then in your planning section, you are doing audit of an NPO. What kind of planning? You need to have your audit planning memorandum. So in large organization, these planning memorandums, they run into pages and pages. But in smaller NPOs, you can have a small one. Scope understanding, very basic, that you are doing only the audit as required by the income tax, or as required by the donors, or as required by the organization for this purpose. Then what are the activities they are doing? What is the audit team composition? You might have deputed only a couple of article clerks, and you are involved in that assignment yourself. But you need to put it on your paper that, okay, these are the people who are part of the audit team. How did you plan the audit? It's many times you plan the audit and you send an email to your staff members, your team members, or you discuss some issues. So those need to be minuted. Those should be, ideally should be part of your audit planning compartment. Then analytics between the current and the previous year at the planning level itself. You might realize that the expenses have increased manifold, or they have reduced, or there is something which has gone wrong in the current year. Then once you do the analytical procedures, you will come to know what all has gone wrong and what all has got right. Then your materiality determination. even if you are auditing NPO, you will need to understand that you are giving an opinion which is based on this financial statement framework. And materiality is one component which you cannot ignore. So you cannot do 100% checking in all the cases. So you need to rely on materiality, and this is something which is expected of you. So how have you determined what is the materiality level for this audit? And then significant risk and whether there was a fraud risk in that NPO. And then your audit strategy, which are the assertion to be tested, controls, or like I mentioned, whether you are relying on the control or substantive testing. Then how many man hours you have budgeted for. So if you are doing audit of a very small NPO, you will need to budget man hours, because ultimately you as auditor are a professional. If you want to do a charity work, you please do collect fees and then give charity. But if you are doing a audit and you are giving your opinion, you just cannot say that I was doing a charity, so I did not prepare my work papers. Because if you are giving an opinion, your audit work paper file should contain the requirement of the auditing standards. So you need to follow those standards, and then you need to collect the fees. So you need to budget man hours in order to understand that you are charging according to the time and effort you are putting on to carrying out this assignment. Then while doing the execution or the field work, your things will flow. Your work papers will flow from audit program. They will flow into the lead sheets, even if it is a small organization or a large organization. If it is an NPO, your lead sheets will be there. And then your lead memo should be there. What all you have decided to carry out, and what data was provided by the NPO. And then which procedures, whether you did analytical procedures, whether you have picked up the sample. If you have picked up the samples, then what is the basis and how have you selected those samples? And what have you done on those samples? And if you have done the control testing, then did you understand the process and you did test of controls? And then what kind of substantive testing you had carried out? Cutoff testing, analytical, and then what specific or what alternate procedures you have carried out. So suppose you have floated confirmation letters, but you have not received any confirmation. How have you ensured by doing an alternate procedure whether the balance which has been shown in the balance sheet is showing true and fair picture? And then what are your observations and what are the conclusion of those observations? So your team might have raised a question. What happened to that question? Whether the NPO has given answer to that question. Suppose there was a question around a kind of donation which has been received. So your team might not be very sure whether this donation is for corpus or it is for your general expense. How have you ascertained whether you just put it there? You have taken any assumption that anything which is not specifically mentioned for corpus will be taken as general, which is generally accepted norm in the tax department, or you have done any other alternate procedures also. And what have you concluded? So whether it is related to revenue, whether it is related to property, plant and equipment. So the NPO might have invested or might have taken some land or might have taken some building, or they might have be dealing in the books. So they might be having inventory. They might have those inventory of books. How have you realized? How have you seen what kind of audit procedures were carried out to know that what is the value of inventory and what accounting standards have been followed? So according to the technical guide, the inventory has to be valued as per the accounting standard, and accounting standard mentions that it has to be valued at the lower of the cost or net realizable value. So which method was used by the NPO to value the inventory, and how have you verified or how have you understood whether the inventory value which has been shown in the balance sheet is showing true and fair picture? And then there may be question around what cash and bank balance has been shown in the financial statement. If the trust or the NPO has done some investments, whether those investments are permitted, if they have taken exemption under the Income Tax Act, whether those kind of investments have been permitted by the Income Tax Act, or if whether those kind of investments have been permitted by their bylaws, whether the donors who have given donation, whether they had put any restrictions on investment in share market. So, and then, whether the receivable and payables which have been shown in the financial statements, what are your audit procedures to understand whether, these numbers are right or not? And then the expenses which have been shown, whether those expenses are complete, whether the NPO has missed out inadvertently or deliberately has missed out on showing any expense. And one point which is very critical while you are doing audit of these NPOs is the legal cases. There may be a situation there might be, so how will you come to know that there is a legal case going on in this NPO? There are other procedures which you will carry out. And if you read the technical guide carefully, the NPOs are required to, it is recommended that NPOs should follow the accounting standards. So your audit work paper file should have a checklist that these standards applicable. You have checked whether these have been applied, not applicable. So whether these standards AS7 is not applicable, construction contract, so it is not relevant to this NPO. So it's not applicable. So the company and the NPO has not applied that accounting standards. What happened to the related party transactions? Whether the NPO is entering into related party transactions, if yes, whether the bylaws are allowing it, whether what kind of contracts they are giving, whether the donors' money has been siphoned off through. So you need to carry out your audit procedures in order to get a confidence and to reach to a conclusion that these financial statements are showing true and fair picture. Then, as mentioned, specific requirement of NPOs might be restricted and non-restricted funds, and in your financial statements, you need to demonstrate or you need to see that the NPO is showing restricted and unrestricted, non-restricted funds separately, and you need to really carry out your audit in order to get a confidence that these are appropriately disclosed. Then, if the NPO is large and they are implementing technology and they are using ERPs, and so you will need to understand whether the IT testing was carried out, whether the numbers which you have received from the system, whether anything was done in the backside tables or not. Then donors' permissions, and there might be some requirements. So you will need to go through the donors' agreement, and you need to make note in your audit work paper file that you have seen this agreement, or your team has seen this agreement, and there was this kind of requirement, this kind of restriction, or this kind of permission was there, which in your opinion, whether the NPO has complied with or not. Then review of secretarial documents. There may be governing body meetings or there may be management meetings. So where are the minutes kept? And please remember, and I will be sharing it with you again, that keeping the copy of those minutes is not sufficient enough. You need to understand what have you done after reading those minutes. And there can be a summary which can be prepared. And then what laws and regulations are applicable on this NPO. So if that NPO is for some environment purpose, what kind of laws and regulations are applicable on these NPOs and whether they are complying with those or not. Then if the NPO is very large, whether the internal audit is applicable, and if yes, you will need to understand and you will need to apply you need to observe in case there are any observations of the internal auditors. And also if the NPO is using accrual system of accounting, they would be using some estimates. You will need to carry out audit of those estimates as well. Like I mentioned in my previous slide, the secretarial documents, it's not sufficient enough to keep a copy of the minutes in your file. You need to really understand what was the summary of the discussion, and if there was any specific instructions which were given by the governing council or the general body of the NPO, whether those instructions or those commandments were being followed by the NPO or not, and whether they would have a direct or indirect impact on the financial statements you are signing off. So this may be very, very relevant. There might be a discussion around legal case. There might be a discussion around, some kind of donations. There can be some discussion around some regulatory issues. You need to, understand and keep a note in your audit work paper file that these issues have been addressed and they have been properly disclosed while preparing your financial statements. The NPOs might, give you synopsis of all the meetings, but you need to keep that synopsis and action taken and impact and the audit procedures which you have, carried out in order to understand whether something was left out or whether something was more there. So you need to be careful about the litigation part. SA 501 required you to have detailed audit procedures around that this part. So you need to prepare a small memo on your understanding of key law and regulations applicable on those NPOs. There might be ongoing litigations and legal cases. You need to have a summary of those and whether the impact has been properly disclosed wherever required as contingent liability or as a liability. So you need to have ABC analysis of those cases as well. And then the minutes of meeting with the management. So you are meeting with the management and the management might be sharing with you some internal MIS or some regulatory issues like FCRA or direct or indirect tax. There might be some show cause notice of some departments like GST. If those are there, they need to be disclosed in the financial statement. And you need to carefully assess whether these will have an impact or not. So seeking direct and indirect, independent and direct opinion from the legal counsel. This is we generally recommend. So in case you are doing audit of a very small NPO, then probably you will see that there is no need for obtaining those kind of independent and direct opinion from the legal counsel. But in case of large NPOs, this will become very, very critical and very important. So work paper documenting the audit procedures and auditors' independent assessment of possible outcome of these cases, high, medium, and low risk, and appropriateness of treatment. That is something which you need to see and you need to demonstrate in your audit work paper file itself. So SA Standard on Auditing 540 gives you guidance on doing audit of key estimates and assumptions. And these guidances are applicable in case of NPOs as well. So there can be a little memo in your understanding as auditor of your NPO's key estimates, assumptions used in estimates and working to arrive at the amount which has been disclosed or has been taken into account. And your risk assessment as auditor that this is very aggressive or the NPO has so many employees and the salary or the gratuity estimation which has been taken is very, very conservative or very aggressive. So you need to identify what is the risk involved and what is the impact that might be having on the financial statements. So you need to really be careful and doing the audit of these key estimates and assumptions. And then your work papers should demonstrate what audit procedures were carried out to test the reasonableness of those estimates and accuracy of the amount which was recognized in the books and the financial statements. So you need to be mindful that your standard on auditing 540 has been complied with when you are doing the audit. So in completion when you are preparing the report for audit of NPO, you need to do a reassessment of what audit procedures were planned in advance in the beginning, whether you need to bring any changes, whether you need to enhance your planning, enhance your audit procedures. What were the significant issues? What were the major issues which you or your audit team might have observed? What was the conclusion on those? So you might have concluded that, okay, this NPO has not complied with this regulation, and this might have an impact, a significant impact. How have you dealt with it? How have you made a disclosure, or in case requirement of standard on auditing 700, 701, whether you have given EOM paragraph, or whether you have given a qualification where you are not comfortable, so you might have modified your audit report. So, but very important is to take the representation letter, and I'll be talking about it a little more on management representation letter. You must have it, and please remember this MRL, management representation letter, is not an alternate for your audit procedures. So whatever happened after the closing date and before you sign off the financial statements, your audit report, whatever subsequent events have happened, you need to obtain a confirmation from them. And then your communication with those charged with governance, then working on audit reporting report and your deliverable, what all you are presenting to the management of that NPO. So what can be significant issues, so one is the management representation letter, as I had mentioned. You need to obtain that letter and you need to have it signed from the management. You cannot just have a format of MRL, and you need to consider that that is just a representation. It's not alternate to your audit procedure. So what are the significant issues when you are doing audit of NPO? You need to understand that where risk, various kind of risks are there. They can be entity level risk. As an organization, there can be a risk, or assertion level risk. I mean, you're talking about expenses, and there might be issue around the cutoff, and significant risk or fraud risk. And might be involved in some activity which might not be permitted. So how have you identified those issues at the planning stage itself? And then your legal cases, litigations, and estimates, those are also significant issues when you are dealing with NPOs. NPO might not even disclose to you that there is a case going on, but you need to have carry out your procedures to understand whether actually there was a possibility of a legal case. Then critical accounting or audit matters identified during the execution. You might have come across something which required you to enhance your audit procedures. You will be it will be expected that your audit file will contain those kind of issues and those kind of documentation. And in case you got stuck and you have taken a consultation from outside or from technical experts, so which were those matters, they should be there. And then issue related to qualification or a modification in the audit report. So working note on each of these significant issues, the fact, the issue, the team's assessment. Then in case you are having two partners and one partner is working as engagement quality review partner or a technical partner, then what is his or her views, and then what is the client response or what is the NPO's response, and then your conclusion. So these are the issues which you should be addressing while preparing your audit work paper files. So standard on auditing 580 you need to be very careful in taking the representation letter. They need to be aligned, with all the matters which are required in SA 580. And any key matters which are confirmed or replied by the management, they should be included in MRL. And document the signed MRL is required, but it is not a substitute for the audit procedure. So if the management is, if let's say, to give you an example, if the balance sheet is showing that in the bank there is a balance of 1,000, you do not do audit procedure, you take an MRL that, okay, there is 1,000 rupees lying in the bank. That's not sufficient, right? So you cannot take MRL, as a substitute for your audit procedures. Then subsequent event is also very important part when you are doing audit of NPO. Many times the information which comes, the balance sheet is being signed on a later date, and in between the closing date and the signing date, there might be some events. So you need to have an inquiry from the management, and you need to minute that inquiry. You need to write an email to them and keep that email in your record, that what were those significant events and what treatment have you done in your financial statements. Then audit work done on subsequent event. So suppose there is a fire or something happened. So what procedures have you carried out? What analysis you have done? What document, secretarial document you obtained? Public domain you have looked into? What news items you found? And then you may take a specific representation from the management on this subsequent event. Please remember that the donors' contracts and their confirmation letters might have a significant impact on your financial statements. SA 260 and 265 requires you as auditor to communicate with those charged with governance. So you need to communicate on timely basis and in writing. You cannot say that I met with the audit committee chairman and chairperson, and then I communicated that we are doing the audit. That's not sufficient. You need to mention certain matters in writing. That is requirement of SA 260 and 265. You need to mention what kind of issues you are planning and how you are concluding. And then you're meeting with the people who are charged with governance, and all communication you have made to them. You need to maintain the minutes. This is requirement of the auditing standards, my friend, and you cannot say that the size was small, so we did not comply with those standards. So some of the NPOs are registered with the Companies Act, registered, incorporated under the Companies Act. Then you will need to, there's no question asked under section 143(2). There is a requirement that the auditor shall make a report after taking into account the auditing and accounting standards. And also the section 143(9) requires you to comply with the auditing standards. But otherwise also, non-corporate NPOs also, you will need to comply with the auditing standards. And since now the technical guide is available, so you can follow those, you can insist that NPO should follow those guidances which have been given. So Audit and Assurance Standard Board has given guidance on the auditing standards. As people who are doing a test function, you are either giving related services or you are giving assurance services. So you need to apply those auditing standards. They are, if you are doing audit of historical information, you will need to apply standards on auditing. They are serial numbers 100 to 999. Then if you are doing only a review, you are not doing any audit of historical information, which is financial information, then state standards on review engagements, which is 2000 to 2699. And then there are engagement other than audit. Then you can have an understanding whether it is an assurance engagement or there is standard on related services. But also please note that many of the NPOs, they will ask you to give you some certificates. So there is a guidance note on certificates to be issued by the chartered accountants. You need to follow those that guidance. So standards on auditing, standards on review engagements, standards on, so different kind of standards have been issued with a specific purpose. So there are audit, if you are doing audit of historical financial information, you will need to express an opinion. If you are doing a review, then you might give a slightly lesser assurance, and you might be giving limited assurance with a negative reporting. For review engagement, you which are not covered in SAs and SREs, then assurance engagement, for example, prospective financial information or review of forecast, you need to be very, very careful. And then there are the standards which are giving you advice on how to give report on agreed upon procedures. Then compilation agreements, like collect, classify, and summarize financial information, because these NPOs might approach you for various kind of activities, various kind of support, various kind of attestation. So you need to keep in mind what exactly are you signing off and which standards you are applying. So there are general controls which you should be applying if you are doing audit of NPO. At a firm as a whole, you need to ensure that you will be taking care of independence. And as I had mentioned to you, that you will be taking in writing signed confirmation on independence from all the partners and the team members who are involved in the audit of that NPO. Then how are you educating them? What kind of skill sets that team is having? And then whether the audit team is doing outside consultation, or whether that staff supervision and development, what kind of activities you are doing. And then how are you maintaining your files? How are you doing your administration in office? Very, very critical part, which need to be there in your audit work paper file. And remember, when the peer reviewer will come, they will have a look at all your attest function, and they may pick up audit of NPO as one of the attest function. Many times the question is asked that what is independence? So the concept of independence is very critical. It is independence of mind and independence in appearance both. So when you're saying that you're independent, it doesn't mean that only on the appearance you are independent, but independence of mind is also very critical. So it should not be, your mind should not be affected or influenced by any person or activity which is affecting your professional judgment. And professional skepticism is very critical and very important in understanding whether you are totally independent or not. And you will need to demonstrate that. So when you are doing audit of a specific NPO, what specific controls you should be having in doing that audit? How you are maintaining your audit records. Like I had shared that there are 5 compartments in your audit file. Then review and evaluation of system of internal controls. If you are looking at that, then you need to have evaluation of that in your work paper file. What kind of substantive testing you have done, and what kind of presentation, whether the financial statement presentation was according to the required framework, and what are your audit conclusion and what are your audit reports. These specific controls should be there, in your audit work paper file. Then the question is, very natural question, which, our vice chairman also asked in the beginning, that there are so many NPOs and there are so many unregistered NPOs. So how much documentation should be prepared? So I think the answer is that it should enable an experienced auditors to understand what kind of audit was carried out. And who is that experienced auditor is, it's a subjective issue, but you can get an answer. So basically, the auditor should be able to understand the nature, the timing, the extent of audit procedures, whether you complied with the standards on auditing, whether your procedures and audit evidence obtained, what was the result of that, and whether you have concluded the significant matters, and what was your professional judgment. So this is something which should be easily understood by the auditor who is experienced. Now, when you're looking at the NPO's audit work paper file, you will need to keep in mind the size and complexity of the NPO. So it is not that for every small NPO or a small trust, you'll be maintaining huge box files and writing down papers and taking printouts of the mails and all. You will need to keep in mind the size and complexity of that NPO. You will need to identify, where is the risk of material misstatement. What kind of nature and audit procedure which you had performed, and what is the significance of the audit evidence which you have obtained from them. What audit methodology you used, how have you done the audit, and what kind, if it is IT environment and ERP environment, what tools you have used to carry out the audit, and then what are the nature, what are the extent of identified exceptions, which are the exceptions you found during the audit, or which are the exceptions you created during the audit. So whether you went to an extent of increasing your materiality level, and why did you do that? What was your anticipated risk? Why have you carried out that kind of procedure? So all that has to be kept in mind, and then basing, on the size and complexity of NPO, you will need to carry out your audit procedures. So generally, audit documentation of NPO, if it is a small NPO, it is less extensive than that for audit of a large organization. But please remember that experienced auditor conditions still will remain applicable. So when you are doing audit of an NPO, you need to be extremely careful. The responsibility you are taking by putting your signatures on that financial statement and audit report of an NPO, that responsibility still remains the same. So let me summarize what all we had discussed. First we looked at the technical guide. We looked at the issues which we are facing in the audit environment as far as NPOs are concerned. So we looked at the technical guide. We looked at various principles which have been given in the technical guide for giving a financial statement framework for financial statements for preparation of NPOs. We looked at the recognition and measurement principles. The technical guides provides you key guidance on recommendation that accrual system accounting should be followed by the NPO, and there are various standards which are applicable, accounting standards. Some of the accounting standards might not be relevant, for example, AS7, AS14, AS21, interim reporting and consolidation of amounts. Those kind of standards might not be applicable on NPOs. There are certain other items we looked at in the technical guide. And after looking at the framework for financial reporting of an NPO, then we looked into the auditing part, how the auditing can be done, what kind of audit work papers you should be having, what 5 compartments you should be having in your audit work paper file, whether it is very large NPO or it is very, very small NPOs. There are auditing standards which you need to follow, and those requirements are there. So you need to really understand that by doing the audit of an NPO, you still carry the same responsibility as you are carrying out audit of other entities. So then we looked at general controls which you should be having in your organization or your firm as an audit firm. and specific controls when you are doing audit of that entity or NPO, what kind of specific controls you should be having. And ultimately, the experienced auditor condition should be applicable. So anybody who is an experienced auditor should be able to look at your file and should be able to understand how have you concluded the audit. So this is all what I wanted to share with all of you. So thank you very much for your time, and I will hand it over to the staff and Mr. Anil. In case any questions are there, I'll be glad to answer those questions.
Thank you so much, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So there are certain questions for this. So first question is, one member is asking clarification on section 10, subsection 23, exemption for hospital and educational institution versus expenditure under section 11. Can these be claimed as per the requirements in each year, or else one has to follow strictly either on the other sections?
So, Anilji, this question is relating to the income tax, and unfortunately,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not an expert on income tax. What I can say from auditing perspective is that how the management is taking a view and what view has been taken, what kind of opinions have been taken by the management of that NPO, how they have recorded that in their financial statements, and how the auditors have come to the conclusion that management view seems to be in order and there is no negative impact on the financial statements, and they are showing true and fair picture. So audit work paper should the auditor should be asking a question that how have you reached to this conclusion and how have you managed this tax issues as far as the claiming of expenses are concerned.
Sir, most of the questions relating to the accounting part only. One more question is relating to, sir, depreciation will be considered or not in case of trust accounting in profit?
So since the technical guide is guiding, recommending accrual system of accounting, so depreciation will be applicable. So as auditor, you will be required to see whether the useful life of the asset has been considered while calculating the depreciation.
Yes. So in the case of grant from the government, whether income has to be recognized on the basis of payment, is it income of NPO?
So there is an accounting standard on government grants, and that standard has been also included in the technical guide. So you look at the conditions and according to those conditions, the accounting has to be done. It's very risky to straightforward say yes or no, because you have to read the conditions which have been given in the government grant, and accounting has to be done according to the accounting standards. But generally what you are saying is right. Generally people follow the system of accounting where they record the grant when it is received.
Yes.
But we look at the auditing part, we look at how the management has concluded that accounting has to be done like this, and the literature of accounting standard has to be kept alongside and to be seen by the auditor whether the management is doing accounting properly. And that is what the assertion of the auditor will be, that the management is the financial statement, they are showing true and fair picture in accordance with the accounting standards which have been issued.
So trust or society is registered under section 1 to 12A or 12AA or 1023C, allowed to invest their accumulated fund in mutual fund.
Yeah, so whether this question is related to income tax.
Yes.
So I think there are some restrictions, and it's a very generic answer. There are some restrictions, but you have to go through those sections, and also the bylaws of the NPO, whether their bylaws are restricting those kind of investments or not. But if you are claiming exemptions from income tax, then there are restrictions which are given in the income tax also. And if you are not claiming exemptions from the income tax, then there is a different scenario. So there are different scenarios. Generally the NPOs, non-profit organization, they take exemptions. So in case they take exemption, then they have to follow what has been provided as restriction under the company, under the Income Tax Act. But as an auditor, when you are doing audit, you need to see whether they have complied with those restrictions and whether they are, showing the true picture in their financial statements.
Sir, which NPO to prepare cash flow? Any monetary limit or condition is there in
So
companies act or all?
yeah, I would recommend that go through the technical guide. There are guidance on preparation of cash flow statements. A very detailed guidance has been given. So there are various ways, various situations where the cash flow statements will be required to be made. And then that can be made by direct method and indirect method both. So I would recommend going through that accounting standard.
So what need to be checked when NPO is engaged in CSR projects of various companies? Generally, in case of CSR, all documents relating to CSR projects submitted to the company giving the projects.
But even if you give papers, but there are copies which are maintained with the NPO, those need to be reviewed and to be checked by the auditors. Even if you give the original ones to the company, but you will in any case maintain a record of what all activities were carried out. So those are very critical aspects. So even if you have to give the original documents to the company from where you have taken the donations, but still you will need to maintain the records, and that record will be reviewed by the auditors, and on the sampling basis, the auditors can verify and take an independent confirmation from the companies also, or those documents can be verified from different sources also. So alternate procedures will be carried out, and auditor will come to know whether the documents which have been shown to them are fake document or the real one, the copies of the real documents.
Yes. So educational society under section 1023C, society having rental income, which is also utilizing educational activities only of the society. What will be the effect on these rental income after latest Supreme Court decisions? If you can clarify, sir.
So this will be, I have to go through in detail for that, and probably we will answer that later on. You just take
Yes.
the contact detail of this member and we will answer it later on. I'll have to go through that decision.
Yes. So any proper format is required for audit report, scope of audit covered under means scope of audit or the format of audit under which section it is mentioned?
Standard on auditing 700, 701. So I have shared those in my presentation. So you need to follow the same audit reports formats which have been given in the standards on auditing.
Yes, sir. Sir, engagement of an auditor for tax audit under section 10B and for general purpose should be obtained separately.
Yes, it has to be a separate engagement letter for both the activities.
For both the activities. Yes, sir. And sir, one more question is relating to this government grants. What about the accounting treatment? If you can suggest or put light on this for the grants other than the government grants.
So the standard accounting standard gives a very comprehensive guidance whether the grants have been received from the government or from other organizations. The standard gives a very detailed guidance on that. And I would recommend that instead of taking a very generic view on the grants, I would recommend that take that view. If it is a incorporated entity, then the accounting standards which have been published by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on recommendation of NAFRA, or if it is non-corporated in a non-incorporated entity, then the technical guide gives a very summarized version of the accounting standards on grant received. So I think it will be appropriate if those standards need to be looked into before taking any professional call. So that is something which is very critical, that whatever I have shared, and that probably is something which everyone needs to be aware of, that these thoughts which I have shared, they are very, very personal thoughts. and they should not be construed as the views of the AASB or ICAI, because you have to go through the literature and you have to understand what is mentioned in the guidance which have been given in the accounting standards or the auditing standards of the institute, and you need to take professional calls based on those, not based on what has been generally discussed.
Sir, relating to this, what points are to be kept in mind are required to be included in notes of accounts of a small NPO, sir?
Yes.
In the what points to be kept while writing the notes to accounts of a small NPO?
So small entity, in any case, you will need to mention their accounting policies. You need to mention, all the components which are required to be disclosed as per various accounting standards. So many times people have a feeling that probably we will not need to disclose many things, but this technical guide will clarify a lot of issues, and you need to really prepare notes to accounts. As I had mentioned earlier in my initial slides, that lack of clarity on what kind of disclosures were required. It was there earlier before January 22, but now there is a lot of clarity and consistency will be there. But the issue remains that not many trusts or NPO will come into public domain. So you will need to really search and find out NPOs which are in public domain, and maybe you can take help of the NPOs which are registered under the Companies Act and download their disclosure notes. Similar kind of disclosure notes will be required for unregistered and unincorporated entities as well.
Yes, sir. So, in case of audit of a registered society, whether separate UDIN are required to be issued for 10B and society audit, or single UDIN for 10B would suffice?
There will be a detailed report, and 10B will be a separate certificate as well.
Yes, sir. So, last two questions. There are so many questions, sir. What quantum of cash amount can be considered as petty if invoices are not taken? Is there any benchmark?
Yeah, this is a very sensitive question. I
Yes,
think it depends on, for some people, few millions will be very small amount, and for some people, few thousands will be very big amount. So I think it will be a very, very tough question to answer. I don't think there is any benchmark of that kind, but related to the size and activities and complexities of that NPO. But as an auditor, you will need to, if they are maintaining huge cash, you will need to carry out some kind of audit procedures. You will need to do surprise check and tell them to show the cash, and then you can the physical cash, and then you can get a comfort whether that cash was actually existing or not.
Yes, sir. So, in case of FCRA registered NPO, if separate accounts are not maintained, then how to report in audit report, and any other responsibility of auditor to report the other authority? Or is there any qualification in the audit report?
I think they will face issue when they will go to FCRA for approval. What auditor will give in their audit report is that financial statements are giving true and fair picture of income and expenditure, and the financial statements are balance sheet. So in case of non-compliance, there might be some kind of report, some kind of comment in the report, but they will in any case face a tough challenge when they will go to FCRA for approval.
Yes. So whether NGO tax audit, that is Form 10B, also counted for number of tax audits limit specified under Section 44A?
Yes, they will be counted.
Fine, sir. So one more last question. Some NPO consider in utilization of grant committed expenses for which approval taken but expenditure not incurred. What is auditor view as expense not incurred only approved by the committee?
It's fine if expenses have not been incurred. The NPO cannot show it as an expense, right? So approval has been taken, that is fine. So, but the expenses have not been incurred. That's you're not showing it as an expense, right? So if you're showing that also as an expense, then it is an issue that it is not an money which was spent, but was shown as expenses. But it is just approved and not spent, and the financial statements are also showing not spent, then it is fine. I mean, your audit work paper will include, those kind of notings and memos.
Yes. Sir, before we conclude, one small question again arise. Sir, registration under Income Tax Act is compulsory for small trust if receipts are less than rupees 1 crore.
Again, I will pass this question because I have not read
Yes.
specific section, so it will be inappropriate for me to answer that question.
Yes. So now we come to an end, sir. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. And once again, from the core of my heart, thank you so much. And on behalf of WSB of ICI for sparing your valuable time and acceding to our request on a very shorter notice and justified with your presentation. I have gained a lot. You have covered all these standards, which are those standards are applicable for this real estate sector, as well as SREs, which SREs are required, SREs are required. Everything you have covered and in a very detailed and lucid manner, sir. So I have gained a lot through your deliberation, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Namaste.